Welcome. So, we have been discussing discrimination based on rate responses of single neurons, and we introduced you to the idea of hit and false alarm and how receiver operating characteristics kind of analysis is started. So, just to recall, we have our hit as beta, which is a function of z, and z is the threshold that we are using when we are discriminating the rate distributions. So, use the same color. So, this is the rate distribution for the plus stimulus. This is the response rate distribution for the minus stimulus. So, this is plus and this is our minus, and we said that we will fix a threshold z, and based on that we will take the decision based on the rates. Every time I observe a rate response of the neuron, I decide whether it was the plus or minus stimulus based on whether it is greater than z or less than z. And the z can be varied from any over the whole range of rates. So, this axis is our rate and this axis is the density or PR. So, we said that our beta z is nothing but probability r greater than equal to z given the plus stimulus, and alpha z is probability r greater than equal to z given the minus stimulus. So, as we started out, if we were to plot alpha and beta as a function of z, that is what we will call the ROC curve. So, this alpha will vary between 0 and 1, and beta will vary also between 0 and 1. Now, let us say we set z equals 0. So, that is a very small value, that is to the extreme left, and let us ask ourselves, for z equals 0, how is our alpha and beta, which is going to define performance, are going to be. So, when z equals 0, that is the probability r greater than equal to z given plus is obviously going to be 1, because the rate is going to be always greater than z. Similarly, alpha of 0, similarly again it is always going to be 1. So, at z equals 0, we have the position of alpha and beta at the top right corner of this plot. Now, if we consider the z to be extremely large or plus infinity, then what we have is over here our alpha of z, that is z equals infinity. So, probability r greater than equal to z is going to be 0, because no matter what the stimulus, our rate is always going to be less than z. So, that means our alpha is going to be 0. So, we will be on this vertical axis, on the beta axis, and exactly in the same way our beta is also going to be 0 for z of a very large value or plus infinity. So, what we have is our alpha and z, our alpha and beta are going to be at these 2 points. Let us use a different color. This is z equals 0 and here z is infinity. So, now let us remind ourselves the table for correct incorrect. Say here we have correct and here we have incorrect. For a plus stimulus, for a minus stimulus, we have hit. This is beta z, this is alpha z, that is false alarm. This is 1 minus beta z, and here we have 1 minus alpha z. So, let us ask this question, that can we have alpha and beta such that the alpha beta combination is below this diagonal line at this point. So, what would this suggest? So, first of all, let us ask what is the probability of correct in this scenario in terms of alpha and beta. So, probability of correct means we simply have the average of these, because if we assume that plus and minus are occurring equally, equal number of times, then the probability of correct is 1 minus alpha z plus beta z divided by 2, that is probability correct. So, in this case where we have these two only alternatives, if you and the animal is supposed to always make a decision either plus stimulus or minus stimulus, then the probability of correct cannot go below half on the long run. That is, if we have probability of correct is less than half, I mean not just due to chance because of the number of trials or something, but on the average, if it is, here we are treating it theoretically, so on the average if it is less than half, then there is a problem in the experiment, in the sense that the monkey may be using some other cue to know in some way that okay, the who knows, that is just simply unlikely, and unlikely meaning it is not possible. So, that means our probability of correct must be greater than equal to half, which means that our 1 minus alpha z plus beta z must be greater than equal to 1, which means if we cancel out 1, our beta z must be greater than equal to alpha z. So, that means all of the points of the receiver operating characteristics curve, the ROC curve, must be on the upper part of this diagonal, on the upper side of this diagonal, and this region is not, it cannot come into this lower region. So, this is forbidden territory for the curve. So, now if we think that the monkey is always performing at chance level for any z, then what we have is that beta z must be equal to alpha z. So, this is going to be the receiver operating ROC curve. For the case when for any z, the monkey is performing just at chance level. What is that case in our experiment? If we remind ourselves, we have the random dot patterns. The random dot patterns are made to move in a particular direction by using different kinds of coherence levels. The coherence level is the highest, then as we know, the two distributions, the red and green with the minus and plus stimulus, are going to be separated fully and probably will be making the correct choice almost every time. And when the percentage coherence is 0, then our monkey is always going to be making 50% times, or is going to be making correct choice, and in the long run both correct and incorrect choices are going to be equal. So, it does not matter for the rates also because for the 0% coherence, we had the distribution for the minus stimulus and the distribution of the plus stimulus basically overlapping each other. That is the case for 0% coherence. So, for the 0% coherence based on the neuronal responses, we should be getting a curve that should hover around this point, because we are dealing with limited data. So, it may go around this point, can come into this region also. Now, as the percentage of coherence increases, the performance of the monkey for the different z values are going to improve. Now, if we consider that for the 100% coherence case, how should the ROC curve be? Which means that we must start off for z infinity here and z 0 here, no matter what the coherence. But as soon as we have some value of z that is greater than 0, then in the 100% case, we should be able to make a perfect decision. As soon as we have z greater than 0. So, in the case where we are making 100% correct choices, all the time the curve should be along this line, just incrementally to the right of 0 in alpha, we will be making 100% correct choices, that is beta is 100, and for beta for a reduction in alpha from 1 slightly, it will be again 100% correct up to this particular point. So, as you can see now, when we are 100% correct, it's almost as if the area under the curve, this here, this unit and unit here is 1. Area under the ROC curve is going to be 1. And for the case where it is 50% correct all the time and the ROC curve is the diagonal, then we have a ROC curve area is half, that is again 50%. So, here is the idea that maybe that the area under the curve could be a measure of the percentage correct. So, as in the case of Britton et al, with the different coherences, the curves that they got turned out to be, for a slightly higher coherence would go up, and for the higher coherence would go up, and for the 100% coherence was almost as if the ideal 100% correct curve. So, this is the change in the ROC curve as we increase the percentage of coherence. So, and as you can see here, gradually as the percentage of coherence is increased, the performance, which if where the area under the curve is going from half to 1, as we saw in the psychometric function for the monkey. So, let us say we had the psychometric function which was like this, so just above 10%, it was 100%, and here it is 1%, above 1% it started to detect, this is 1% correct, and this is percentage coherence. So, now based on the neurons, the rate responses, using this analysis as we have here, we will be getting a percentage correct based on the area under the curve if it would be if we can show that the area under the ROC is the percentage correct. So, let us go on here and now consider this idea that we are observing the rate in response to a plus stimulus and a minus stimulus, and let us, without loss of generality, we assume that the first stimulus is plus, the second stimulus is minus. So, this is R1 and this is R2. Now, if we take this idea further, that we have to make this decision based on these two rates, and the rates are basically R is equal to R2 given minus, and here R is equal to R1 given plus. And now, if we use the response rate to minus as the threshold, that is, since it is a two alternative force choice, if the minus is coming next, then this R2 can be made our Z. That is, if R1 is larger than R2, we will say plus stimulus. If R1 is less than R2, we will say minus stimulus has occurred, the next one. So, if we take this Z as R2, then we can write out the probability of correct in this manner, that it is going to be, so if for a particular Z, the probability, let me just use this. Let us say we have a particular value of Z. So, let us draw this curve here, this curve here. We have a particular value of Z, and we need to find out what is the probability of correct, and we see that first thing is this Z is our threshold, which is the rate 2, which means that how often will we see that? That is our probability of rate given probability of rate less than equal to Z. We will have the probability that the rate is given minus integrate this over R and multiply this by beta Z. So, why do we mean that? What do we mean here? That this is the density PR given minus times dr is the probability that the rate is on Z and just around Z plus delta Z. So, Z plus delta Z, that is our probability, and times our beta Z. So, we can also, by the way, we can replace the R by Z, and this is PZ, that same distribution, and we can have Z varying from 0 to infinity. So, what we are doing is we are saying what is the probability that the rate observed given a minus stimulus is Z, which is the integral this without the beta Z. But then we have to also be correct in the sense that the next rate is greater than, or the first rate has to be greater than z, which is the probability of hit, and that is beta z. So, if you multiply this 2 and integrate, we basically get the probability of correct. So, what we have here is integral dz, or rather, I mean, we can write it either way, dz p z given minus times beta z, where z is varying from 0 to infinity. Now, what is our alpha z? The alpha z is that false alarm, that is, again we have the rate response for the second stimulus R2, that is the observation that it is z, and we need to integrate that. Okay, we know that given the stimulus is minus, we are saying that the stimulus is plus. So, actual stimulus was minus, then if this is our z, we essentially get the integral of the z being 0 z to infinity, that is over this range. If we integrate and say that the probability, or the p z given minus dz. So, again the same way, this is the probability that we are observing our rate, second rate given the minus stimulus is going to be z, or around z plus dz, and the integral of the same thing over z to infinity is going to be, that is the z for z larger than this threshold value. I am sorry, this should be rate. In this case, we have a rate here, rate given minus dr, and the rate is going to be varying from z to infinity. That means our decision is plus stimulus. So, this is the probability of observing a particular rate given a minus stimulus, and we are setting this r to be the z. So, now what we are saying is that we will say it is a positive stimulus when the rate is varying from z to infinity, that is, we are above that rate given a minus stimulus. This is our false alarm, that is alpha z. Now, if we consider our d alpha z dz by applying the rules for integral derivative of an integral, where we have the function of the variable for which based on which we are taking the derivative. If that is in the limits, then this derivative turns out to be minus p of z given minus. So, now the probability of correct, if we consider, is minus p of z given minus times dz is our d alpha from this equation. So, our probability of correct here can be written as minus integral 0 to infinity d alpha, change with the change of variable, times beta z. So, now if so this is the case, I am sorry, we have to change the limits here because we have changed the variable from z to alpha. So, we have d alpha here, and so for z equals 0, our alpha is 1, top right corner on the ROC, and for z equals infinity, our alpha is 0. So, this reverse direction of the variable over which we are integrating is countered by the minus sign in front, and so what we get is percentage correct is integral 0 to 1 d alpha beta as a function of alpha. So, I think we should write this as only beta because we have removed z, pardon me. The alpha beta, and so obviously this is showing that if we consider the ROC as alpha and beta as a function of alpha, then the area under this curve beta as a function of alpha is the percentage or probability of correct, because this is representing this area. Okay, so based on these this analysis using the rate responses for neurons, what Britton et al. Showed that based on the responses of empty neurons in the different directions and different coherences, the percentage correct performance based on the neuronal responses could well match the psychometric function of the monkeys, that is their performance, actual performance, which means that for the different coherences, if the monkey's performance was like this, where this is around 10%, this is around 1%, then if this is 1 and this is 0.5, then based on the neurometric functions, that is for the neurons, we get a similar sort of curve that matches with the performance. So, this was only a correlational observation. As we have discussed, it is important to establish causation, and this was one of the first studies, in fact the first study in this kind of behavioral experiments where causation was shown, as what Britton et al. Did, and I mean their group did, is they now stimulated neurons in a particular location in the MT, and based on that they could alter the behavior of the monkey, so in a predictable way. So, that actually took the whole analysis to a step further and showed that indeed the rate responses are what are being actually used by the monkey to make the decision and is matching the actual performance based on the neural performances. Thank you.